John Beaudin, Rock History Music. We thought it was a hoax. Everyone thought it was a hoax. I was just doing a live broadcast a few minutes ago about this mountain of reel-to-reels that we're switching over to digital. And people kept coming on and saying, John, it's real, it's real. And I went, don't spread rumors. Well, now David Crosby's wife has released a statement. Just before I should give you the headline, David Crosby of the Byrds, Crosby, Stills, Nash, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, co-founder, dies at 81. His wife has released a statement. She sent it to Variety magazine, so it's kind of real. She says, "It is with great sadness after a long illness that our beloved David Crosby has passed away. He was lovingly surrounded by his wife and soulmate, Jan, and son Django. Although he is no longer with us, his humanity and kind soul will continue to guide and inspire us. His legacy will continue to live on through his legendary music. Peace, love, and harmony to all who knew David and those he touched. We will miss him dearly. At this time, we respectfully and kindly ask for privacy as we grieve and try to deal with our profound loss. Thank you for your love and prayers." Wow. So it's true. Let me just lower the volume of the responses we're getting here because we're getting a lot of boop, boop. Thanks for everyone who came on. Let me just get to your comments before I get into his career, which was long and fruitful. And RBF Calf, another great one passes. You were on before everyone else. That's very true. Tim P, I just read. Rest in peace, David. Alonzo Smith. Oh, God, not again. Not another one. Alex Knight. Hey, Alex, my good friend. Oh, no, Cross. Bums Harvest. Gosh, they're dropping like flies. Neutral 69, RIP David C. Tony Walker, one of the absolute favorites. I have all his albums. Had the pleasure of meeting him once. Very sad. VTV Classics. Thank you. You were one of the ones telling me that it was true. Ronnie Parker. This year is starting off bad. Rest in peace. Alonzo Smith. 19 days into the new year, and we're already Jeff Beck, Lisa Marie Presley, Robbie Bachman, now David Crosby. True. Bums Harvest. I've seen Crosby, Stills, and Nash, and many times, too bad. John Adams losing too many good ones. Alonzo, Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young, one of the earlier supergroups. Sad to hear. Timber Vlogs. Alonzo says, great singer and songwriter. And a man who didn't suffer fools. I mean, let's be real here. He was one of those guys who spoke his mind. Went on a limb sometimes and got himself in trouble. For basically talking a lot of things that people did not want to hear sometimes. Let me just make this a little smaller. When we talk about the Byrds, of course, I mean, everyone thinks about things like, hey, Mr. Tambourine Man. But let me get into sort of the past after. We'll read his wife's comment again. But with Roger McGuinn, Gene Clark, Chris Hillman, and Michael Clark, the Byrds were a big thing from 64 to 67. And then, of course, he met up with Stephen Stills of Buffalo Springfield, and which was really nice because Neil Young was also in Buffalo Springfield, but he came in after. And, of course, Graham Nash from a little band from the other side of the pond called the Hollies. And they were another super group. And these bands were known for harmonies. And when I talk to people from the Eagles, Randy Meisner, Bernie Ledden, talk to folks who like B. Birtles and Graham from LRB, and even Glenn Shurrock from LRB, they talk about how hard it is to get vocals down pat. And LRB were trying to do Crosby, Stills, and Nash. When I talked to Graham Goebel, he said that's what we were trying to do. That was the art. That was the thing that we tried to reach as far as getting harmonizing. And everyone knows when it comes to LRB, they had some of the best harmonies in the world. But who were their heroes, right? With the Byrds, just to give you, I mean, the Byrds were it as far as influencing people in that vein of that kind of country rock pop thing. Mr. Tambourine Man was number one in the U.S. in 1965. And then after that, they had another one, Turn, 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 right? Number one. 8 Miles High, number 14. Mr. Spaceman, So You Want to Be a Rock and Roll Star. Remember that? Number 29, which of course Nazareth used on Too Close for Rock and Roll, on their medley song, right? My Back Pages. And just to look at the Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, or Crosby, Stills and Nash, Marrakesh Express, number 28. Sweet Judy Blue Eyes reached number 21. Woodstock, which was written by Joni Mitchell, was number 11. Teach Your Children, what a song, huh? 16. Ohio, 14. Our House was another hit, number 30. And when the comeback happened, I remember I was 17 years old when they got back together in, 76, 77, Just a Song Before I Go, which you remember was a teeny little song. It was a very short song. And of course, everything that's happened since then. I'm going to get to some of your comments again. Let me just get to that. Just give me a second. Who died? You got to read the headline, man. JD, come on. I'm just getting too. I just want to go. Actually, I'll go to the bottom and go up. It'll be VTV Classics. I will be playing all my old Crosby, Stills, and Nash and Young vinyl in honor. Yes, Southern Cross. I love that song. Snowman. Wool Hat Derman. There are people who are still angry of what Crosby said about Eddie Van Halen. I know. Yeah. And he was just one of those guys. I think that David Crosby was one of those guys that sometimes, because he could, I used to call it old man syndrome. And you know some relatives like that. Where they get to it, I've got relatives who are like this. They get to a certain point in their lives and they just think they can say anything. I've gotten to this point and I can say whatever I want. I mean, David Crosby was always a little like that, to be fair. And he got to a point where he thought he could say anything. And sometimes, and I always say this because I'm a firm believer of a good man should be with a strong woman. So a strong woman can tell you you're full of crap. I can't even swear on this channel anymore because of the new guidelines on YouTube. But you should have some. It's good if you have someone in your life who can basically tell you you're full of, let me just get out of this here. Yeah. So I'm not saying he did or didn't have that, but sometimes people need that to say, hey, you're still learning. And I found that very disrespectful when he did that to Eddie Van Halen. I was doing a live feed, the live feed. I remember talking to 50,000 people on and off on that live feed who were feeling it, man. They were feeling a great loss. And not long after that, we heard about that, what he had said. Okay. Tony Del Monte. I saw Crosby, Stills, and Nash in Chicago. My mom at Target Center in Minneapolis. Michelle, amen. Kevin Walsh. He didn't write nor sing on Southern Cross, folks. Speaking of English with this guy, can you swear? I think just not the first 8 seconds. Burns Harvest. All my favorite people are going away. Caroline says, just heard the news about his death. Wow, not another one. He's with the Lord. Okay. Stonewall Jackson, Evening John. My two favorite tunes from him were Southern Cross, the American Express. Someone just said that he wasn't on that. Justin E., you gotta put the person you kicked off about the death. I didn't kick anybody off. I said I was going to, but I didn't. Alfonso Smith, Wikipedia says he had a long illness. And so does his wife. Let me just read this for you. I hate when I eat long words like that. When I'm going, let me read this for you. That's the crutch in broadcasting. And I've been doing this for 40 years. You think I know better. His wife released the following statement. That's where we knew it was real. And she sent it to Variety, which is an incredibly good source. It is with great sadness after a long illness that our beloved David Crosby has passed away. He was lovingly surrounded by his wife and soulmate, Jan, and son, Django. Although he is no longer with us, his humanity and kind soul will continue to guide and inspire us. His legacy will continue to live through his legendary music, peace, love, and harmony to all who knew David and those he touched. We will miss him dearly, and at this time we respectfully, kindly ask for privacy as we grieve and try to deal with our profound loss. Thank you for the love and prayers. And fair enough, right? But it's true. It's not a hoax. This started earlier on today when TMZ, and I'm not here to say nice things about. I have my own feelings about TMZ, but they are pretty quick on the draw. A lot of the times when it comes to, they will not release something unless it's true. And by freak of nature, if this was fake that they sent to his wife, from his wife, I doubt it very much. Let's read. Aaron Campbell, he played with Donald Fagen on his For Free album. Oh, Justiny, thank you for your super chat. Kim says, I loved his music and his work with CSN. Thank you for your super chat again. Van Connor died yesterday. Alonzo says, wow, David becomes the 8th person of the Byrds to pass away. The Byrds have had a lot of, Michael Clark was a big loss. But Michael basically, he kind of threw his life away a little bit. He had a hard life. Roger McGuinn, Gene Clark, Chris Hillman, Michael Clark, the Byrds from the glory, 64 to 67. And then Crosby, Stills, and Nash. Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young, which I was just talking to Mark Howard, a producer, and he had a chance to talk to Joni Mitchell and spent some time with her and remix some of her music. And he had said that, and he does the Joni Mitchell voice, and you'll hear it on this channel. I just finished editing the whole interview. And when he said that, she said that Joni had said that David Crosby, who of course produced some of the early Joni stuff, had misproduced his stuff. She didn't like the fact that he took her guitar and overdubbed it to sound like more than one guitar. She didn't like that very much because she's very organic, Joni Mitchell. But I don't know. Let me get to some comments. DRW, how, what, where, rest in peace, Cros. Blue Smoker, bird is the word. Marcus Mandel, oh damn, rest in peace, David. Gary Sandman, we will miss you. Love helplessly hoping, oh yeah. Rebecca Landry, wonderful singer, loved his music. John Locke, damn, so sad. I'm only 45, but still grew up with his music, of course. Let me see. John says, I'm so sad to hear this. Let me see some comments that I might have missed. Let me get to some of the music again. Thanks everyone for coming on. Appreciate it. Sometimes when we grieve together, right? It's kind of the thing that we do when it comes to music. Look back at and when it comes to David Crosby, of course, you look at the Byrds. Mr. Tambourine Man was their first big hit. First big hit at number 1, in 1965. And then the next big number 1 hit, the next really big hit was Turn, Turn, Turn. After that, it was 8 Miles High. Love that song. So You Want to Be a Rock and Roll Star, which, as mentioned a while ago, Nazareth covered. Number 29 in 67. Then My Back Pages. And by the Summer of Love, things started fading as far as single sales. Have You Seen Her Face was released in May. Lady Friend was released in July, in the Summer of Love in 67. And when you're looking at Crosby, Stills, and Nash, Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young, Marrakesh Express was a hit, number 28 in 69. Then Sweet Judy Blue Eyes, Woodstock, which was written by Joni Mitchell, Teach Your Children, Ohio, Our House, Just a Song Before I Go, when they came back in 77, which was a big thing. My big thing with that song, though, I remember going, and I said this a while ago, Just a Song Before I Go, how long is that? It's like a really short, isn't it 2 minutes and something? It's a very short single. But I remember as a 17-year-old thinking it was the harmonizing was incredible. Then I realized, oh, wait a minute, I've heard these guys before, of course. But I never bought a Crosby, Stills, and Nash. Excuse me. Crosby, Stills, and Nash and Young song. Never had at that point at 17. I was a real rocker. And then I went back and you feel ignorant. You go, oh, all right. Going back to the hippie days when these guys, Laurel Canyon, they were there, right? They're harmonizing. We're insane. And when you think about Buffalo Springfield, you know, the harmonizing was one of the best. And I said this a while ago, but Little River Band, they set their sights on harmonizing with Graham Goebel, Byrds, and Glenn Shorrock. They set their sights to sound like Crosby, Stills, and Nash, or at least try to get to a level that was like that. Graham Goebel told me that. Glenn Shorrock told me that. Byrds might have told me. I interviewed all three of the guys that were the main singers in LRB. And talk about great vocal bands like the Eagles. I interviewed Bernie Ledden, Randy Meisner. Not that they specifically mentioned Crosby, Stills, and Nash, or Young, but harmonizing and getting to a certain peak was everything they wanted to do as far as, good songwriting, touring, working really hard, and Crosby, Stills, and Nash and Young did that. When the body of work, and you also look, people always talk about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. They love to trash the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but let's remember on how they influence so many people, as far as harmonizing, singer-songwriter, all that stuff, the songs. Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, he's been inducted, David Crosby, twice as a member of the Byrds in 1991 and a member of Crosby, Stills, and Nash in 1997. No surprise. So he's a heavyweight. Some people might not have liked him politically. We're not going to get into that, but I will mention it. And they looked at him sometimes as a hack because of his opinions. And he did say what he said when Eddie Van Halen died. Disrespectful. And I'm a big believer of not necessarily trashing someone on the day they die, or the day that it's announced. It's kind of a day of, let's be cool. Excuse me. Sorry, with all these reel-to-reels I have, having to digitize everything, I'm waking up at like 6, 7 in the morning, and Keith, thank you, and then going to bed like at 2 o'clock in the morning, just to digitize all this stuff. So I don't mean to yawn during a broadcast, but I'll read the statement that his wife passed on. And she said this to Variety magazine, so we knew it was true, and they checked it out. Of course, there's certain magazines there's certain things you don't report on until certain magazines report on it, to be safe, because you don't want to report on something that's not true. Remember the Tom Petty thing? We reported on it, and later on we found out that he was dead when his daughter spoke out and said, oh, how could you, they're all a bunch of wolves, and I'm going. And then later on we found out that it kind of looked like, not that we're sure, but it kind of looked like he might have been dead at that time when everyone was reporting on it. His wife released a statement. It is with great sadness after a long illness, so it wasn't a short thing as some people were reporting, that our beloved David Crosby has passed away. He was lovingly surrounded by his wife and soulmate, Jan, and son Django. Although he is no longer with us, his humanity and kind soul will continue to guide and inspire us. His legacy will continue to live on through his legendary music. Peace, love, and harmony to all that knew David and those he touched. We will miss him dearly, but at this time we respectfully and kindly ask for privacy as we grieve to try to deal with this profound loss. Thank you for your love and prayers. There you go. Rock and Roll Hall of Fame twice. Not surprising. Of course, the Byrds got in 1991, Crosby, Stills, and Nash in 1997. I mean, he was in the folk scene, playing at the Troubadour in the early days. Again, sorry. We're working around the clock on digitizing all our interviews. And he was like, at the Troubadour as a solo artist doing his thing, But he didn't look like your general rock and roll star. He didn't have the looks that some of his compadres kind of had. So he relied on attitude and songwriting and his vocals. And the fact that he had both feet on the ground, he was a hippie and he did indulge, as we all know, more than most, as we all know. But he kind of made it work in the long run. It's just things that stood out for some people, like saying "meh" when Eddie Van Halen died. That was hard on a lot of people because it was an apple and orange thing. You ask, well, could he understand that? Would he be open enough to understand that? How could he not get Eddie Van Halen? I don't know. You heard me say this before. You either like Justin Bieber or you don't. I'm not a big fan, but you either like something or you don't. You can choose to be disrespectful and dismissive of something, or you don't. Sometimes celebrities get to a point where they think they can say whatever they want. And he didn't suffer fools. David Crosby certainly didn't. He spoke his mind. Let me get to some of your comments. Thanks for everyone being on here. Please share if you've met him, but it doesn't mean you don't have to have met him. What does this mean to you? Share with us. Tom Monk, it's a shame that he and Nash were still feuding. They were. Edward Bliss thought he was shedding a tear. Alonzo, one of the pillars of folk music. Yes. Nobody's perfect, Hank. You're right. That's very, very true. And you didn't look for perfection as far as just being a guy. Deja Vu is a big one. Tony, yep. Hank, he was brilliant. I can't say that word. Blues smoker. Alonzo Smith, David trademark mustache is legendary. Very true. Brad, him and Graham Nash fought like cats and dogs. Very true. Justiny, they absolutely had to happen and were a big hippie era soundtrack. Very true. Agent Pepsi, these musicians are real musicians, unlike the mononote auto-tune people of today. There's a lot of people today that just, I always look at them going, there's a lot of people who are doing what they do today that rely on sensationalist stuff. Just not that they didn't in the past. Look at Jim Morrison. I wonder, did Jim Morrison do the outland like Miami? Remember the famous Miami concert where he swears at the crowd? And you look at stuff like that and you go, did he do it because he was in the moment and he did it? Did he do it because he just didn't care? Which is David Crosby had that software too. There's a part of him that just, I'm going to say what I'm going to say. Or did he do it for publicity? And I think when it comes to Jim Morrison, I don't know. I don't think so. But no one ultimately knows, right? We can all guess. He had such a great voice. Noslin954. Hank, coffee. Yeah, I need coffee. Joe Louis. As death doesn't bore me, I'm tired. I wake up at 7 and go to bed at 2 because we're digitizing interviews. Max Mauser said, meh. Oh, God. Yeah. Brad says he didn't get along with too many people. I talked to Marcus Eaton, who was his guitarist. I didn't have a chance to. I might come on, and I have a few artists that I've talked to who talked about David Crosby through the years. But Marcus Eaton toured with him. And Marcus Eaton is a buddy of ours because he's been on the channel as a solo guest. And I talked to him. I says, well, what was the deal? And his brother did the David Crosby documentary, by the way. Marcus's brother. Forgot about that. And he just said he didn't suffer fools. He was just a guy who was very open-minded musically, but you kind of knew your place. If he had a problem with you, he'd tell you. That's refreshing to some people. Not everyone wants to be with someone who is really honest with them. I'm of the ilk where I like to hear that. My wife and I tell each other we're full of crap all the time. We say, don't say that. You look like an idiot when you do that. Or don't do this. We do it in a way that we can understand. I'd rather be with someone like that than someone who isn't honest. I need to be with someone who's honest with me. I dated a girl who was like 10 years younger than me years ago. I think she was 19, I was 29. I shouldn't have been dating her, but she ended up being a really good friend of mine, so it ended up really good. She's still a friend of mine. She's a principal in Oregon. But I remember she looked over at me and said, "By the way, I noticed that only when you eat salad with your mouth open." I went, "What? What?" I had no idea, but she had the guts to tell me that. She didn't think anything of it. Maybe it was because of her age. I remember going, "Good on you for telling me that. I need to know that." David Crosby was the type of guy who, if you ate salad with your mouth open and if you didn't like it, he'd tell you, and that's okay with me. Not everybody would like that, right? So let me get some of your comments. Melody R. Hey, Melody, nice to have you on here. Rest in peace, David. Justiny Heaven, you might be looking up. Noslin 954, honestly, his is best. I wonder how Sheryl Crow is doing. I don't know. Brother's son, Graham Nash, is feeling grief right now. Michelle Rose Jackson, it was time. Rest in heavenly peace, David. God bless. Chuck Gines, rest in peace, David Crosby. I swear to God, I was thinking he's going to pass soon. There was rumors that he was sick. Luz Marie says, one of my favorites since I was 4. Todd, where are you? I just lost your comment. Todd says, lasted many years for a guy who was, I can't say those words. I know what you mean. Indulged in things. Luz Marie A says he had a liver transplant. I do believe he did. Met him. He was grouchy. Lionel Martin. Thanks for sharing that, Lionel. He was, some people had said he was malcontent. They weren't saying things about David Crosby like maybe they said about Lou Reed. Lou Reed, I've met a few people who knew Lou, and they said he had a mercurial personality where when it was not good at all. Paul Starlights, Jimmy Morton allegedly molested I can't say that, and his mother never believed him. You got to be careful what you say on YouTube now. You just got to be very careful. So sad, Rhonda says. Flipper Carlin, spending time with Stephen in Colorado in the mid-'70s and hearing him talk about Cros. This truly hurts. Agent Pepsi 1, rock history music sensationalist, yes, but they were musicians. Many today, I am not sure if they have the talent. Well, I always look at, to me, the ultimate example of more headlines for non-music are people like Demi Lovato, who my personal opinion, it's just my personal, I don't consider her a musician, but people of that ilk of going, why are you getting more headlines? Why do people, it seems like you're getting headlines for, and people know how I feel about Demi Lovato. Beautiful girl. Lovely, lovely girl. It seems like she's pretty bright. I'm not sure if I want to spend 5 minutes with the girl, but I mean, all this sensationalist crap of going, just talking about that yogurt shot. That's the kind of music, like, these guys were counterculture, whether people believe them or not, because when Joni Mitchell went out and talked about Spotify and Neil Young, people were going, oh yeah, counterculture in my butt. But they really were trend setting, and he was. Let me read the statement because I have to circle back. David Crosby, Byrds and Crosby, Stills and Nash co-founder, dies at the age of 81. His wife released this, and she give credit where credit is due. She released it to Variety magazine. It was with great sadness after a long illness that our beloved David Crosby has passed away. He was lovingly surrounded by his wife, soulmate Jan, and son Django. Although he is no longer with us, his humanity and kind soul will continue to guide and inspire us. His legacy will continue to live through his legendary music. Peace, love, and harmony to all who knew David and those he touched. We will miss him dearly. At this time, we respectfully and kindly ask for privacy as we grieved and try to deal with our profound loss. Thank you for your love and prayers. Yeah, from 64 to 67, it was the Byrds, one of the most influential bands, and they were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1991, which Roger McGuinn, Gene Clark, Chris Hillman, and Michael Clark. And then, of course, Crosby, Stills, and Nash. Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young. Buffalo, Springfield. We had like Stephen Stills coming from there, and Neil Young, and Graham Nash from the Hollies. All vocalizing bands. All bands that were known for their vocals. And I'll mention this. I've mentioned it a few times when I talked to Graham Goebel, Glenn Shorrock, and B. Byrds of Little River Band, they all said that they tried to get to a level where they were inspired so much by Crosby, Stills, and Nash Young. It was a big thing for them to try to get those vocals. And Little River Band were known for their vocals, harmonizing vocals, and it's a big thing. The Byrds, as I mentioned, were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in '91 with David Crosby, and then again, David Crosby was nominated, or rather was in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for a second time with Crosby, Stills, and Nash. Thanks, by the way, for all your comments. It's when you think about this, it's a big deal. America. Well, let me talk about the Byrds first. Songs that, when you talk about songs that when you hear them, whether you can connect the fact that Mr. Tambourine Man is the Byrds. Not everyone can, because we're miles away from that, because that was 1965, right? I was 5 years old when that was released. But of course, being a music guy, I quickly had to educate myself into who the Byrds were. When I was in the early 70s. As mentioned, just a song before I go, I remember getting that because my best friend was a radio guy, and he educated me with Crosby, Stills, and Nash, Young. But Mr. Tambourine Man with the Byrds was number one. Turn, Turn, Turn was number one. They had two number one hits. So the first one in 65, Turn, 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 was in the latter part of 65. And then 8 Miles High, which influenced a lot of folks, as well as the two other songs. 66, Mr. Spaceman was a hit. So You Want to Be a Rock and Roll Star was. My Back Pages. But then by the summer of 67, which was the summer of love, things kind of waned a little bit. As far as, Sweetheart of the Rodeo, it's strange, not a big seller at the time, was just such a quintessential album for so many people. It just influenced a lot of people. With Crosby, Stills, and Nash, America Express, Sweet Judy Blue Eyes, Woodstock, written by Joni, Teach Your Children, Ohio, Our House, Just a Song Before I Go, which was the comeback in 77, Wasted on the Way in 82, then Southern Cross. Man, a lot of really, really good music. That they and then of course his solo stuff, which, let me get some of your comments. Justin E., I don't think people today realize what it was like in the 60s with all the wars. It's true, every rock star was pissed and passionate about stopping Vietnam. Just a Song Before I Go, Mick V. Surf Boy, hey, nice to have you on here. Whether you like him or not, he was part of the rock generation and changed the world of music. Very true. Hey, Blaze, Brother John, just heard the news. 8 Miles High, Wooden Ships were anthems. They really were. 8 Miles High, it was like this big sound, right? Haunting, which I think a lot of their music had that sort of feel, melancholy, reminiscent of just melancholy, pretty, just great melodies, stacked melodies, sounded good in concert, could still recreate it. They had a lot of infighting in the group, which you're going to get with that sort of thing. You get great minds together. It's like you're juggling wives. It's like you're juggling different wives, and each one of them is pushing you. All the great bands. Look at the Eagles, Fleetwood Mac, right? They all go through that. Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young, strong personalities. The competition, the ultimate Lennon and McCartney competition. When you look at the next guy's doing this thing and it makes you strive harder. That duality we have in life is what makes people great or crushes them. Either, if you can't stand the heat, the cliche goes, right? I think that's what happens with these great bands. Think about it. When have you not at times say, well, I'll show him, or I've got to pick up my, I got to pull up my pants here. And I think that happens. Think about it. These guys, Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young, being in a band like that, having to write music. Oh, I talked to, my brain's tired. That's what happens when you wake up really early in the morning and go to bed really late, digitizing interviews. We get some comments. Who is better, Noslin? Crosby, Stills, and Nash, or Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young? Oh, well, it depends upon I think your mood. I think with a band like that, it goes both ways all the time. But I love going through the music because, in the long run, when everything fades, when people eventually will forget your name, these guys probably not for a while. But I remember hearing Marrakesh Express, it's got that kind of like happy feel to it, right? That in 1969, again, we were talking about the Summer Love 2 years later, reached number 28 on the charts. Sweet Judy Blue Eyes, number 21. And these are not the people who are reaching the top, because I think they're Just a Song Before I Go was their biggest hit. Think about that for a second. Their comeback when they all got back together. Wasted on the Way was number 9, but Just a Song Before I Go was actually their biggest hit. That's interesting. Do I have my phone here? Let me look up something. This is worth it just because of. Let me look up something. I'm always curious on what is, in the long run, what is. You'll see. Let me put it this way. You'll see a band with the song. Maybe this song A is their biggest hit, but then you go through Spotify and you take a look at. Okay, well that's nice. That was their biggest hit, but what has stood the test of time, right? What are people asking for today? And here it is. This is interesting. Followed by Just a Song Before I Go, Love the One You're With, which is in the family of those guys. Sweet Judy Blue Eyes. Interesting. So sometimes people used to say, how come people don't, this is connected, why don't people play Love Will Keep Us Together anymore? Why don't radio stations play that song by Captain Antonio? Because they played the living death out of it in 1975 or whenever it was. And then radio stations stopped playing it and became almost a novelty song because it was so big. And then it comes full circle, but it takes years for it to go around again, right? There's certain songs that are big hits at the time, but in the long run, what are people still playing today? And they're still getting played in classic rock, though classic rock's sort of in transition right now. They're adding the 80s to classic rock on radio. So let me just go back to the statement. Basically said that he had a long illness from his wife, which was sent to Variety magazine. They mentioned, of course, everyone mentions the fact that he was a member of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame twice. David Crosby was, with the Byrds in 91 and Crosby, Stills, and Nash in 1997. He started as a sort of a singing troubadour, playing literally at the Troubadour when people started noticing him. But to be a member of the Byrds and Crosby, Stills, and Nash, Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young, I mean, if you're in that, I always say you got to do the work to get into the room, right? And he did. He didn't suffer fools, said what he wanted to say, made some enemies on the way. Dwayne says, me. There you go. You know he was going to get that. Melancholy Man said he had a liver transplant. Julia Rod says, teach your children. I'm just reading some of your comments. I've got to temper some of these because not everyone was the biggest fan of David Crosby because he just said things which angered some people. So I'm going to take off because I've got a lot more digitizing to do and we'll leave this video on. But a big loss in music, when you're in the company of such great people, when you're talking about the Byrds, which was such an influential band, Roger McGuinn, Michael Clark, Chris Hillman, Gene Clark, and Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young. I mean, think about that. Being invited in that company, standing your ground in that company, making enemies in that company with what he certainly did with his bandmates in Crosby, Stills, Nash. Oh, thank you for the super chat. Let me check. Who is that? Who is that? Who is that? John Pot, Nate. John said Crosby, Stills, Nash was one of my favorite groups. He also did a song with Phil Collins called Another Day in Paradise. I love that song. Thank you. Anyway, thank you everyone for coming on tonight and tipping the hat to, it's not necessarily the day to, you know, to say other stuff about him, but he gave us a heck of a lot. I was surprised by his death. I didn't know he was sick or anything like that. But thanks everyone. This is John Beaudin. Like our video. You're not liking the fact that he died. You're liking the fact that we're reporting on it and sharing your thoughts on it as well. And subscribe to our channel. And like I said, like our videos and comment on it as well. John Beaudin, love you guys. Rock history music.